So I call this the Christian God hypothesis, that the universe was created by an omnipotent, omniscient, morally perfect being who cares specially about mankind and who acted historically through Jesus of Nazareth. This is a specific factual claim, and we're discussing the evidence for and against its truth. So I'm not going to consider the merits or otherwise of religious practice, the consolation of religious belief, nor any alternative supernaturalist beliefs. Since Bill has cited the alleged resurrection of Jesus as one of his arguments, I take it that we are concerned quite specifically with the traditional God of Christian philosophy, not any other. And as you can check out for yourself on Wikipedia, there are plenty of other gods to consider, even if we confine ourselves to the Near East and North Africa and just the letter A. With another 25 letters to consider, plus China, India, Japan, the rest of Asia, Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, North America, South America, Australasia and Oceania, there are far more to come. Clearly, we are amazingly prone to believing in gods. And perhaps the main reason for this is our tendency to what has been called promiscuous teleology, that is, seeing purpose in everything. Young children naturally think of inanimate objects as acting with a purpose. For example, in a recent experiment, a majority of 7- and 8-year-olds endorsed the explanation that mountains exist to give animals a place to climb, in preference to the alternative that mountains exist because volcanoes cooled into lumps. We humans are also very prone to seeing patterns in things and looking for reasons for anything we notice, even if it happens to be coincidence. So when we can't find a reason for something significant, such as a violent thunderstorm or a plague, it's very tempting indeed to invoke invisible intelligent powers as the cause. Gods, demons, witches, and so forth. Once this happens, of course, the familiar dynamics of human society and politics come into play. Strong individuals, either devious or deluded, claim special knowledge of and relationship with the invisible gods. And this divine hotline enables them to achieve power, influence, and wealth. My own university, Oxford, derived a great deal of money from donors who thought that by leaving a legacy of subsidized scholars to pray for them daily, they would be spared some of the torments of purgatory and hell. Lucrative power of this sort tends to be keenly defended through ruthless suppression of heresies and drumming out of dissent. Over time, the organizational structures evolve and belief systems get entrenched with familiar results. By far the main determinant of religious belief, and overwhelmingly so before international travel became commonplace, is where you were born. This clearly isn't consistent with the hypothesis that people generally adopt their religion on the basis of rational considerations. No, it's manifestly a cultural phenomenon, with traditional beliefs cascading down the generations quite independently of whether there's any good reason for holding them. Science used to be rather like that too, when it was thought that Aristotle and the Bible gave the key to everything. Aristotle's science developed from the same promiscuous teleology I mentioned a moment ago. For him and his medieval followers, stones fall because they are striving to reach the center of the universe. And stars move through perfect circles around the earth because they are striving to imitate the eternal perfection of God. We know better in the wake of Galileo, Kepler, and Newton, but that was 2,000 years after Aristotle had died. The progress of knowledge was painfully slow over all those Christian centuries, when pagan libraries and schools were systematically burned and closed, and even the books that remained, including the Bible, could only be read in Latin and Greek. Hereford's Cathedral Mappa Mundi bears graphic testimony to this lack of progress. It dates from the turn of the 14th century, just 200 years before Columbus, but faithfully draws its information from writings of the early 5th century, with nothing apparently learned over those 900 years. By comparison, Galileo's refutation of Aristotle for which he was famously persecuted by the Church, was barely 400 years ago. But in those 400 years, virtually all of science as we know it has built up, massively transforming the world by its careful method of observation, experiment, and open critical scrutiny. Scientific beliefs do not depend on cultural indoctrination for their acceptance and transmission. As a result, you won't find scientific theories being geographically determined in anything like the way that religions are. Now, I expect that as I say all this, Bill is preparing to accuse me of the genetic fallacy, because I might seem to be... Bullseye! Because I might seem to be arguing that because the belief in the Christian God has dubious origins, therefore it must be false. But that's not what I'm saying. Of course, it's possible that the belief in God could be true, even if we hold it for feeble reasons. But my point is that if some method of acquiring beliefs leads to lots of different and conflicting beliefs, then that method obviously cannot be relied on. Now, many of the religious belief systems around the world do clearly conflict with each other, so they cannot all be true. Indeed, if we focus on those religions that make an exclusive claim to truth, such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, at most one of these can be true. However, they could well all be false. Since these beliefs are typically acquired and maintained in much the same way, from parents, by religious education, from charismatic preachers, ancient holy books, appeal to religious experience, and so forth, it follows that these methods of acquiring and maintaining beliefs cannot be relied upon to deliver truth. This should give pause to the honest believer, sincerely searching after truth, when he or she finds that many other people, thinking in the same sorts of ways, have come to such incompatible conclusions. Now, if you've been brought up within a Christian culture, it's natural to think that the choice is between Christianity and atheist naturalism. Either God exists, or there's no supernatural at all. And in that context, it's tempting to think that before examining the question in detail, it's a 50-50 probability. So when you come to a debate like this one, you might feel that neither of us has more burden of proof than the other. But this is quite wrong. Because in arguing for the Christian God, Bill is supporting just one supernaturalist system out of thousands, whereas I am doubting whether there is good reason to believe in any disembodied supernatural intelligence. There is a total lack of any solid scientific evidence for such disembodied intelligence. All well-attested examples of intelligent behavior rely on a complex physical structure, a brain, or perhaps in the future a computer. Moreover, all well-attested examples of perception and mental causation rely on physical intermediaries, light rays, signals travelling down nerves, and so forth. There is no solid evidence whatever for clairvoyance, telepathy, or telekinesis. None. Maybe you don't want to take my word on that, but it's surely obvious from everyday experience that the quality of our thinking clearly depends on the physical properties of our brain. When we are sick or tired or senile or under the influence of drugs or deprived of oxygen, our thought is correspondingly affected. This is absolutely familiar, yet many religions, including Christianity, would have us believe that our thought can exist quite independently of the brain, unimpaired and even enhanced after the brain and the whole body have been completely destroyed. Well, let me be extremely generous and allow that amazing conjecture, which lacks any shred of solid, repeatable experimental support, and which is so contrary to all our experience of the close correlation between the mind and the brain, a probability of 50%. Even if I do so, Bill's specific religious claim that there is just one omniperfect God, uniquely revealed through Jesus of Nazareth, has to share that 50% probability with thousands of other conflicting religions. This is why I say that the rational attitude is to place a very strong burden of proof on Bill. Unless his case is overwhelmingly strong, we should not believe that there is any such God. That implies at least agnosticism, but I think also atheism. The rational attitude, in the absence of a very strong case for the existence of a Christian God, is to believe that there is no such thing. just as the rational attitude towards any speculative theory, in the absence of a strong case in favour, is to presume that it is probably false. Speculative religious theories are a dime a dozen, and the vast majority of them have to be false. Why should we suppose that this one is any exception to the rule?